Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room, the only one.
Of the Situation Room today is the 31st of January 2024. Tomorrow we get into February, and then that whole conversation begins again. Love is in the
air. We are on air, but love is in the air. Valentine's Day is here. Did you know? And we want to show you how you can make it even more special, courtesy of the Elegance in Love dinner. No matter what your love language is, you know, people have a love language. No matter what your love language is,
that is
love
just
language.
a current buzz. It's just a fad.
No matter what it is, Eric,
your
you
love
know what
language
yours
is.
is.
Slapping the forehead.
Somebody's
love language is you what?
No matter
Clicking
what
3
it is.
times a day.
Now, all those things that you do.
What's your
no
love
matter
language?
what, don't worry.
Okay.
Talk about it after 10 p.m.
No matter your love language.
We definitely speak it.
Okay. Yeah.
Elegantly. Be sure to join us for an evening of filled bliss at the Sarit Center on the 14th of February 2024 from 6 p.m. You better not miss it. Simply go to www.tickethub.co.ke and get your tickets. Elegance in Love. It's a cocktail dinner and it's brought to you by the Standard Group and the Sarit Center.
Hivo
too.
Okay.
No matter your love language.
No matter your love language, February is coming, and 14 days from tomorrow, you will be in the spotlight. Love me not.
What happened to you two when I left?
We learned a new language.
Yeah.
It's
You were
love.
okay when I left. Then I come back and you're all fuzzy and warm and
What are you trying to say? That we're cold and callous before?
It is Wangari. Just blame her.
Me, I come with love.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's the presence of Wangari. Wangari Moikia is our next guest. She's a public finance management expert with EGCL Institute. Good morning, Wangari.
Hello.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. We haven't spoken this year.
Imagine.
I haven't spoken to anybody here this year. So Happy New Year. Imagine. Just in the nick of time at the end of the month.
Yeah, at least it's not in February.
Which is my birthday month.
Bas. City.
Yes. I'm
See now?
giving you early notice.
See now?
I'll make you
what
warm.
do I see? I also hear.
Very good. Very good. We will be talking about the shilling and how it's been performing in the market and what this means for our economy in general and what it means for even us as people in terms of just spending. Valentine. Good excuse coming up.
Wow, I'm broke.
Have you seen the shilling? Have you seen the shilling? All these things you want are bought with shillings. Have you seen the shilling? So, Wangari, as you come in, City is going to give you the day's proverb. It's courtesy of EcoBank and Ndu.
Yes.
Why EcoBank?
You know what? It's a Pan-African bank. You know this, don't you?
Yes, yes.
33 countries around Africa. This bank is present in all of them. Hires over 14,000 people across the continent, making it easier for you to transact when you wake up, when you go to bed, one country to another. It's bringing Africa together in how we bank, in how we perform our transactions, bringing the continent together and making it just easier to transact. And even better, coming and supporting one of the greatest sporting events of every 2 years, which is the CAF Africa Cup of Nations, bring those nations together and saying, because of EcoBank and because of the way they operate, we can be a better you, a better me, a better Africa.
Like that.
Like that.
So, Banamuga, courtesy of EcoBank, we're just taking you to Zimbabwe this week.
Yes.
What is the day's proverb?
The day's proverb is fairly simple and straightforward. Passion is of greater consequences than facts.
Is it simple and straightforward, Wangari?
Passion is of greater consequence
Yes, than facts.
than facts. It kind of makes me think of that, the other saying that a lie has gone halfway across the world by the time the truth is putting on his socks. And I think that's interesting, when you see people talk with fervor and passion, you're able to capture hearts. I don't think the two are mutually exclusive. If you speak passionately about the facts, perhaps, you can get some traction with that. Right?
So what are you saying? These Zimbabweans are not making sense. Is that your interpretation?
It's my interpretation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That
Speak passionately about the facts. That's what I'm taking away from that.
speak passionately about the facts. Consequences be damned.
Or speak factually about the passion.
Oh. Sheesh. Okay.
Yeah. That, yes.
That as well. Higher. Wangari, the last time you were here and today, the shilling has basically lost like 50 bob to the dollar, right? To the major currencies. And I'm looking for the CBK rates. I'm going to get them. The latest one. So we are past 160 to the dollar, past 180, 190 to the euro, past 200 to the pound, past even to the Uganda shilling, past whatever, to the Tanzania. What's happening?
Hi, well, actually it's quite shocking, for many of us who have been dealing with the shilling at, even there's a time when it was like 80 bob, but then
Yep.
like it was settling around 100 bob. For it to be at 160 is quite shocking, and it can be quite alarming for people. But it's not really the currency depreciation can be good, has good outcomes and some bad outcomes, right? So it's bad in the sense that we as a country are a net importer. So if our shilling, it takes more shillings to buy a dollar or a euro or a pound, that means whatever we're importing is much more expensive to us.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, if I'm an exporter, people are seeing my goods and services. In fact, the horticulture industry, I think, is really benefiting from this. My goods are much cheaper for people to. It's much easier for me to export. So there are different sides to the coin. But that being said, it's kind of like been a precipitous fall, and that can really shock the market, right? So I think the central bank has been trying to put in measures to halt it. Governor Thuge has been, he raised the CBR rate by 200 basis points to kind of stem the depreciation. Whether it's working, there was a slowdown of the depreciation in December, but we're still seeing it depreciating. So,
Okay.
So it's not working.
What?
well, I think they're different. They're different forces. We're also an open economy, so we're really exposed to what's happening outside of in the global economy. So, the U.S., we're very exposed to what happens in the U.S. So when the U.S. Increased its rate, it caused an outflow of dollars from the economy, and when that happened, it also triggered the depreciation of the shilling. Everybody talks about the Ukraine war and all of that. That did happen because now oil, food prices were affected, so that also caused the depreciation to happen because through the dollar.
Wangari, can we get an understanding of exactly what this means when we talk about the shilling having lost value over time, right? We remember a time not too long ago, 120 shillings to the dollar. Now we're looking at central bank rates at 160. Now, I don't think that there is an understanding at the very micro level what this actually means. That when we say that it has lost value, what exactly are we talking about? Everybody uses it as an excuse. I did a thing with a rider the other day, and he said, $1 in Nakuru. Okay. We don't understand what it actually means. What are we talking about here? What exactly has happened to the shilling?
So, depreciation and even foreign exchange is really a comparison between currencies, right? As we know, currency in and of itself, it's actually coins, it's paper, it's kind of Money is an idea, in a sense. It's the value that we put the currency holds the value that we put in our productivity and how we engage in trade. So when depreciation happens, it means that one jurisdiction's trade or one jurisdiction's demand for its currency is higher than ours, right? So that means, if there's, for example, like if I talked about the US Fed, right? They increased their rate. So that means that people are saying, okay, if I put money in the US, it means that I'm going to earn more because they're paying me more for saving in the US. So I'm going to take all my dollars out of the country and put them in the US. So what does that mean for Kenya? It means that people don't want our money, right? They want to take the dollars and take it out. So when you have too much of something, like you oversupply of something, the value goes down. So we have an oversupply of the shilling, which means now the value of the shilling also starts to go down. So kind of in a sense, if you think about it, even just from a general perspective, if you have too much of something, then it doesn't have as much value as it should. Yeah. So and that is how the dynamics of depreciation
So what
work.
causes this excess shilling then to be in the market? What are factors then that say, all right, there could be less shilling or there could be more? What happens to create that situation?
So when there are more shillings in the market, I said, like it's because people don't really want the shillings because it's not as attractive.
Okay.
What the governor, the central bank, has been trying to do is to create a demand for that shilling by increasing the central bank rate, right? So when he increased it by 200 basis points, people are like, okay, let me look for shillings so that I can put it in the central bank, so that they create a demand for shillings to now they increase the.
Please say that again. Just
the
dumb
value.
it down a bit. Ati, so when the central bank increases the rates by 200 basis points, first of all, what is 200 basis points? And then what does that mean?
Yeah, so 200, even though sometimes like, why do they call it 200 basis points? It's really like 2%.
2%.
2%,
You know?
yeah. So the central bank rate is an indicator of how it's a return on investment, essentially. It's an interest rate. Yeah. So and it's an interbank interest rate. So it's the central bank tells banks that if you give us money, we'll give you 12% on your savings. Right?
Okay. If you give the central bank money.
Exactly. The central bank is actually paying you. It's like a savings account in a sense, a big savings account. You put the money in the central bank.
Banks have accounts with the central bank.
Yes.
So that money, if they increase it or whatever they give, the central bank pays them interest.
Exactly.
All right.
So now when they increased it by 2%, it means we are going to earn 2% more on the money that we're giving central bank.
Okay.
That means banks have an incentive to actually mop up, to
look for savings.
They don't want to give, actually during these times, access to credit goes down because banks don't want to lend to us, to the Wanjiko, the Wananchi. They prefer to lend to the government because the government is paying them higher, and it's much easier to lend to one than to lend to many. So in effect, that means that it lessens the money that's in the market.
Okay.
And as we said, when there's less money, the value of something goes up.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the central bank has also, this governor, Thuge, has said that the previous administration in the central bank was trying to artificially hold up the shilling. What does that mean?
They have been saying that they were holding the shilling and the shilling was overvalued in a sense. Yeah. And overvaluation, when you think about overvaluation, and other jurisdictions like, if you think about places like China, have also been accused, or their thinking is that they are doing this kind of overvaluation. What it does, when a currency is overvalued, it makes it cheaper for you to, it makes it more attractive to hold your money, right? And so it makes it easier. It increases the it increases.
It has more buying power.
Exactly. So then actually it helps economies, especially emerging economies like ours, to continue to import, which we're a high import economy, net importer, to import at better rates.
Okay.
So I think there was probably something like that that was happening during the last regime or the last tenure of the governor, where we're trying to actually shore up the economy as a net importer to make sure that our shillings are able to continue to buy the imports that we need for manufacturing, for for consumption and like that. So what Governor Thuga is saying now is that if we continue to do that, then we have a distortion in the market, right? We have a shilling that is overvalued, that is distorting the economy. Essentially, it means that we're not actually getting the true value of the shilling. So what he wants to do is to allow it to settle in at its
True value.
And then now we can now stabilize the economy and move from there. The challenge is we're not, our structural, economic structure is actually not in the best place right now. I mean, our debt payments are high. So imagine if we're repaying, which is what everybody's talking about now, right? Our debt is dollar denominated. So now we're paying, before we were paying 100, 120, now we're paying 160 and going up for debt payments.
So Thuge's move has actually increased our debt portfolio.
Thuge is trying to actually, well, it's not like a direct effect. There are these different movements. So if you increase the CBR, it means he's trying to stabilize the currency.
How is that working?
There was some effect in December, but it's still slipping, and it's an art. At the end of it, it's kind of like an art trying to get that figure.
Let me talk like a layman, okay? Give it the freedom to move as it may within the market so that it finds its own level, all right? There's an assumption that other currencies understand the game plan we have
and
they'll comply, okay? Fine. So we go about our business. From what we see, we keep losing. The shilling keeps losing value. Why I say our debt portfolio increases, there's an interest attached to our loans. So every time the shilling is devalued, that interest, what we are supposed to pay, increases. And because we borrowed the sort of money that is mind-boggling and often difficult to comprehend with a simple mind like mine, then it goes now to, it's become stratospheric. Now, what he's trying to do, theoretically, is not difficult to understand, okay? But what is the reality of it? Because if every time the shilling does a little dip, you hear we now have increased 1.5 billion to the debt we had. It takes another dip. You're told it's now 3 billion. Saying, wait. So, the benefits that you speak of, at what point will we realize that Dr. Kamau Thuge's plan is actually working and is actually beneficial to us?
Like I said, it's an art. Unfortunately, I mean, if we knew that point, we would have, I'm sure Governor Thuga would have tried to get that point, right? But what you do is you have to test the market and to test to where we can get to. Because, when you increase the interest rate by 2%, it doesn't just mop up the money. It also, the inflationary pressures, unemployment starts going high because people are now they're pushing their money to
liquidity is reduced.
So it reduces economic growth. But at the same time, when you have a lot of shillings in the market, there's also economic increase because, getting that balance of the depreciation, meaning that there's a flood of money, but you're also trying to mop it up. Economic growth increases because now you have a lot of shillings in the market, guys are employing. But then if you're doing the opposite at the same time, because you are mopping up, but then it's a little bit complicated. You're flooding, but you're taking out.
I hear you completely. But what do we need?
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
I've heard that nations who previously were in a similar position, what they started to practice was to begin to reduce their imports and increase their exports so that it made it necessary for others to buy from them in whatever currency that they were going to do it. But then what that did was that it increased the reliability of other nations on you as a nation, and that meant that you would then increase the value on your currency. Does that work?
Increasing your exports, it implies that you do have the capacity to just increase.
Exactly. So now that's what
manufacturing.
So now that's where I was going. Now with other infrastructure set up, then you would be in a position to then be able to essentially call the bets because you have those infrastructure, that infrastructure put in place. In order for exports to happen, certain things need to have been done on the ground. So are we not just kind of like, the more we say we want to develop, the more we say we want to institute 1, 2, 3, without actually putting those things in place, we just continue in this circular motion of not being able to get out of this thing, instead of actually putting up those factors for this development that is actually very necessary to play at this level.
Well, I mean, from what I hear, and partially what you're alluding to is related to why we're even in the debt that we're in, because when we borrowed, at least the initial borrowing that we did, we were investing in infrastructure. Right, we invested in the railways, we invested in the port, we're investing in the roads, and that was a bet that we took to create a foundation that allows for the growth of the economy through manufacturing and through improved trade. Right?
Yeah.
The challenge is when you build a road, when you build a railway, you don't get the returns immediately. Yeah. So the money that we borrowed, the return on investment is going to be over years, generations to come. And it's not going to be a lump sum return. They're not going to give us a lump sum into our bank accounts. So in that, there are kind of long-term and short-term effects. And the short term is where we are seeing with the kind of the cyclical turns, right? We see recessions, we see booms, and the economies, especially in an open economy like ours, what another country or another jurisdiction does, especially one that we trade heavily with, affects us directly. So they, it's not like the US are looking at Kenya and saying, hey, let's stop increasing this rate because of Kenya. No, they are concerned about what's going on in their own
country.
So, in as much as we have, we have kind of long-term goals, we have infrastructures that we want to build. We still have to deal with kind of the ups and downs of what is happening in the economy, and that is where getting it right is tricky.
It's a tricky balance. Let's take a break. We'll continue this conversation shortly at 8:30. Ndu, tomorrow is February.
First.
And then it's Valentine's month.
Like that.
And it's also Wangari's birthday month. Okay. Love is in the air. Tell us.
Now, what we want you to do, no matter what your love language is. Siti, do you know that people have a love language?
I've been told, yes.
Yes. Now, no matter what that is, we are saying that what you can do is head on down to the Sarit Center come the 14th of January. You see me now. The 14th of February. Because love is in the air. As Kenyans, think about it. You have an opportunity to be out there and express this in whatever ways you can, in whatever ways you want to. So there's a dinner that takes place on the 14th, and we want you to be able to get your tickets at tickethub.co.ke. Bring somebody along. Buy those tickets. Enjoy the season of love. And,
bring somebody along.
The person that you express yourself in love to.
Oh, like that,
If the language of love is eating. If the language of love is drinking, buy them Keringet. Tell them, kunywa maji dada.
And if the language of love is money, open an account with EcoBank.
Tops. We'll be back shortly. Good morning.
This is the morning.
All right, our conversation
Done right.
continues with
94.4.
With Wangari Moike. She's an economist, a public finance management expert with EGCL Institute. We are talking about the depreciation of the shilling, what it means, and just trying to understand why is it doing the things that it's doing. So, assuming that Dr. Njoroge and his then administration of the central bank were doing what Tuge is saying that they were doing, they were shoring up the currency. Was that a bad thing or was it a good thing then? And in our current circumstances, with the maturing debts, with everything else, was it a wise decision, in your opinion, to say, no, let's fungulia the dogs and let the shilling go and find its home?
I think it depends on the policy environment at the time. Yeah. So and also the different governors have different ways of doing, implementing policy. And I think what the former governor wanted to do was it was more protectionist in a sense, to keep the economy stabilized, to ensure that we continue, that manufacturers, etc., continue to be able to afford the raw materials that they need to produce goods and services, and for the economy to continue to be stabilized. I think what we're seeing now, and also because now we're facing a lot more different, like a very different economic environment. Even over Dr. Njoroge's tenure, there was also COVID that was happening. A lot of people are saying, we should have increased the rate then much higher, so that we could also ensure that the economy also stays stabilized from that perspective. But then I think with now Dr. Thuge is much more, what could I say, bullish in trying to get us to be more, to let the market decide. And get us to a basis where the country is actually trading in real, with the real kind of, with how the value of the shilling actually is, for better or for worse. Yeah.
Was it the right time, though?
Well,
consider there's a $2 billion bullet payment that's coming up under your watch. There's maturing interests for the various other loans. There's everything else that you have and you're dealing with.
Yeah.
And look at the effect of what has now happened. So the CBK is now raising its rates, and that basically just means that there's no money for the manufacturers to access to run their business. It means that they need more money to import their raw materials. It means that it affects the manufacturing sector and the businesses that import raw materials to be able to. Then it also means that even exports are affected. It means that even exporting to Uganda, the money that you would have made in Uganda by exporting to Uganda, you're not making as much.
Essentially, our economy slowly slows down.
Yes.
And when it slows down, we know the effects.
Well, not directly. Like as he said, our exports are now much more attractive because the shilling is depreciated. Yeah. So exporting.
Is it reflected in our earnings?
It is. Yeah. We actually. I mean, there are some idiosyncrasies. I know for example, horticulture, floriculture went up in exports, but actually the volumes were not as high because we were going through, the drought at some point had affected agriculture sector. So as I said, there are very many different moving parts. But we also have our big brother, IMF, who I think there's always. They are the lender of last resort, known as the lender of last resort. And they have come through, So we look like we are going to be able to make our payments through the support of the IMF. But on the back end, also the IMF has come with some of these directives to ensure that part of it is allowing the shilling to float more freely. But yeah, in terms of meeting our debt obligations, I think we did come to a point where even if our tax regime is really high, we kind of are milking every little red cent from every living citizen in this country. But at the same time, if we're not able to meet, even in December we said that we were going to try to pay early, and we were not able to do that. Many say that we have an economy that is too consequential to fail, and as a result, IMF have come to support us.
But if we look at IMF, all those Bretton Woods institutions, yes, they are the lender of last resort, and we look at countries. Let's put it this way: who haven't they lent money? They lend money to China even now. Okay, even as we speak, they lend. They lent money to Germany after the Second World War. They lent money to Japan. But without fiscal discipline and without an understanding that the monies that we get and the reprieve that we get must be marshaled in a certain way, are we seeing that happening in Kenya? Are we seeing us prioritizing you see, the tax regime we understand. All these things are supposed to force certain discipline on us. But are we seeing our government enforcing that same discipline on themselves? Because as we are limited with the scope within which we can actually move as citizens, the government has greater latitude and we follow in their footsteps. Because IMF, yes, will give us money. We will have to pay for it. But what about what we are supposed to actually do? Do we actually do it?
I think some of the conditions under which the IMF give us some of those resources means that there has to be a lot of changes from a fiscal standpoint and from a monetary standpoint. I think, CT, also the idea that, for better or for worse in terms of what we borrowed for and how much we borrowed, there, in some sense, had to be some sort of consequence. Right? I don't think we are able to just borrow and live like...
It's inevitable.
Yeah. So I think that is where, the question arises, where, in the previous regime, things were kind of going as usual. Yes, there were kind of aches and pains, but everybody felt like cost of living was manageable. People were going about their lives. But when you think about it, if we're in a high debt environment, we should be kind of feeling a little bit of the pain of paying back the loan, which is, I think, what is happening now. In order to pay for what to pay the interest and to repay the debt, we must take a little bit more out of our pockets, right? For us to be able to ensure that we have fiscal discipline, we have to manage the wage bill better. There are a lot of different things that are happening, and the IMF has given us conditions.
I'm actually in agreement with you, but here's the oxymoron. All these things, yes, true. But when you have a situation where the very money that you are supposed to collect is actually being reduced by the circumstances we have in the country. One, liquidity has gone down. So the very economic activities that are supposed to ensure that we generate a lot of money aren't taking place as they should. People are being laid off. Now, these people, in one way or the other, will pay taxes directly or indirectly or in whatever way. So we have a mixed situation here where decisions are being made, but they seem to be working against the very interest of what we are purporting to want to do. So it's an odd mix, but at the end of it, what we keep seeing with every single day is an avenue to find a way to tax people yet again. Again. But if the number of people who are taxable are reducing, if the number of people who may be taxable but are unwilling to be taxed is increasing, you see, we find ourselves in a very, very interesting position here because one, World Bank, IMF notwithstanding, the thing about money, the borrowing, expenditure by the government, there's this little thing called optics. So long as the citizenry do not think, I am part of that citizenry, who doesn't think or feel that whatever money we get isn't utilized as it should. And so this pain we speak of, some of it we should bear because we owe money, but some of it is being inflicted on us, and we had no input whatsoever in bringing about the problem that's causing the pain.
Spoken, you took the word right out of the mouth. At the end of the day, there is that aspect of, even as we are collecting all this money from the taxes, fees and charges, we have a very high tax regime. We're suffering because of debt payments. The money that we have to build a budget, to finance the budget is reduced, right? And then on top of that, we think about now the corruption cases that we're also suffering from, right? We can't say we're we're working in an environment that is a straightforward environment, right? So I think there's a lot of push and pull, a lot of give and take. There's some things I think that are working right. I think we are making some of the right moves. We are feeling the pinch, but by the same token, a lot of the challenges that we have, like I mentioned about corruption, some of how we are managing our parastatals, even how we are managing the government, are questionable, and we perhaps have a lot to do internally to make sure that the mechanics start working right. These things are not overnight. They take some time. And as I said, you try some things, you try to institute something, and some things work and some things don't. And for me,
so we are living in a live trial here.
It is always a live trial anywhere you go. Even if you're in the States, Janet Yellen at the Fed, she also tries X. I mean, you do it with the best information that you have possible.
But this
you
best
have good
information
teams.
cannot be changing morning and afternoon. I mean, you've got to have a certain direction in which you want to take.
I'm sorry.
You cannot just be making a decision today. We're going this way, and then you change that decision. We are going this other direction, because does that? I don't know. You're the economist. You tell me that would have an impact.
No, I don't think we're doing that. I think we have, I think, clear policy directions. For example, we want to make sure that back to the topic of depreciation, we're trying to stave off the slide. So there are very clear directions to that,
So we unleash the slide and then we try and stave it off.
No, we're trying to mop up the currency. The governor is increasing, and I think it's going to continue to increase until we get to a point where it seems it more stabilized. Look at even what happened with Nigeria.
Right.
Look at what happened with the Naira Ndu. I don't know how it is, how it's going on at home, but that fell precipitously.
10,000 Naira to $1.
It fell precipitously, and something like that happening overnight is very damaging to economy. So even if it's about stabilizing the currency. It's about trying to make it in a way that the government, that it does adjust. And like I said, depreciation is not a bad thing. It's good in some senses and
it's
it
bad
can be
in
challenging
some.
in others.
The unfortunate thing is that there are too many factors here that are interfering with whatever it would be, just like you mentioned, that would start to help folks to see. Even when we say that there are measures being put in place, that there are things being done, I don't think it's of such great value that you should be able to see and feel the effects of even one step. And I think that is the problem, that there's so many competing factors. Whether you look at Nigeria, for example, where indeed it's 1,400 Naira to the dollar today, or here in Kenya where it's 160 to the dollar. But then the competing factors like corruption, mismanagement, inability and lack of desire or even having any kind of political will to do something on a macro level which affects things at the micro level. And we can talk about the formulas, Wangari, but there's the actual doing. There's the actual showing that this thing must happen. The people who work at the financial departments of governments are people who are worth their salt, and they understand what these things are, that in terms of policy, in terms of what needs to be done to take economic responsibility for holes that have been dug. But the truth of the matter is that we are not forthcoming. That is the truth. And that there can be facts about things, but there is the softer side, the subjective part of it, where you say, can we implement these things? Can we make sure that we are being responsible when it comes to debt? Today, if anybody wanted to be honest and ask the questions and do the traceability of where these monies actually went that are being paid for with such expensive rates today, nobody wants to come out and be very clear about what they were, where it went. And that's the truth. Nobody wants to be forthcoming about the implementation of policy that has been suggested at Treasury, that has been suggested at MITI, that has been suggested across board. Can we do them? But somehow we don't. Monies that should go towards making those things happen, we do not see the trace and track of them. And until and unless, in my opinion, we see some of these things happening, it'll be we owe today, whether we're in Kenya or Nigeria, and IMF will come and save us tomorrow, and it continues in this ugly race. Again, it's
Like down the drain.
It's going,
know,
it's
but you
hurtling
know-
down
you
the
know,
drain.
if you
we
think
should
about
be able
it.
to see it the same way. Sorry, Wangari. If we put $1 billion in the economy today, we should feel it. If governments are making steps to make sure that you start to see some kind of revaluing of your currency, we should see it. We should.
You know, I think the fact of the matter is that government runs from different perspectives. You have to have people who provide right technical advice. They provide you the ways to get out of things, or the ways to stabilize the economy and that type of thing. But we also very, very really living in a political environment. Yeah, and politics has its own idiosyncrasies, or it has its own confusions that adds to how the economy is actually structured, right? So even if a solution is technically correct, the politics of the day also has its own effect, for better or for worse. Right? In some jurisdictions more than others. Right, so people are looking to have be re-elected in X amount of
2
years.
years' time.
Yeah, they have to think about who they're going to be able to who is going to support them, who is benefiting from the depreciation, who is not benefiting, and how you manage that. So you don't come up with technically strong solutions all the time, but you do have to have. And I don't envy
You do
leadership.
need
People
to
who run
have-
for government for leadership of countries.
You need
It's,
to have a plan that you rally people around, right? Do you have options outside of the IMF right now in where we are?
Right now, because we're in a tough spot, and as I said, the IMF is the lender of last resort. They come when there's really no one else.
End
to
of
go
the
to.
tether situations.
Yeah. Now doing these Eurobonds, it's just not feasible for us. The interest rates are too high. Trust even in the market, we didn't even.
They were
repay. We
high
said we were going to
even
do
at
it.
the time we're
Yeah,
taking them.
but we didn't have much of a choice, because now we became a middle-income country, and access to
Our
concessional
access
loans was low.
to free money was
So
limited.
now, when things are thick, is now when we have come back to the IMF and said, look, now we need some support, and
So here's the impact. When we borrowed this money 10 years ago at $2 billion, the dollar was about 100, right? So it was 200 billion shillings. In June, if today was June at 160, that is 320 billion that we just need to pay back, minus the interest that we have paid and we are repaying. And so that's why I'm asking, do we have other options outside this? When the president addressed Parliament last year, he said, I can say without fear of contradiction that we're going to make one first payment this December. It didn't happen. He spoke in Rome yesterday. He was in Italy. Kenya is looking to buy back in February or March at least some of the $2 billion Eurobond, President William Ruto told Reuters on Tuesday, dismissing any risk of the country defaulting. Failing hard currency reserves, a steep weakening of the local currency, and revenue challenges have raised questions about Kenya's ability to pay off the bond, which matures in June. Ruto had told Parliament in November that the Kenya would buy back $300 million of the Eurobond before the end of 2023, but he said the government transaction advisors ultimately recommended against doing so. Here's a verbatim quote on him. What they have recommended is we do a buyback in February, March, and then we go to the market, he said in an interview in Rome on the sidelines of the Italy-Africa Summit. Thank God they were right. In fact, the markets have opened for Kenya as it has for most other countries. So right now he's saying now we are going to the market in February or March. In November he had said December, next month, we are paying something. In December they say, no, we've been advised against it. Now again, we're saying one of those that was the transaction advisors was Trade Development Bank. He says the government is no longer counting on the Trade Development Bank, an African Development Finance Institution, to organize a $1 billion syndicated loan for Kenya, as initially planned. Kenya's finance minister said earlier this month that Trade and Development Bank had lent Kenya $210 million of that total, but the remaining funds had not been delivered. Ruto says, because of the situation that we now see in the market, we believe that it will be a lot easier even for us to raise the money in the market rather than through syndication. So I'm asking you.
Where are we exactly?
Well, I
What
don't
direction
know.
are we
Yeah,
taking?
I don't know. Do we
Just
know who's
a few-
advising the
A few
president
days
on
ago, we were
economic
going
policy?
syndication. Now we are not going syndication. A few days ago, we're not going to the market. Now we're going to the market in February or March. And
Where are we? See, this is the
So,
problem.
so as we are dealing with this, you need to have a plan that you say, this is the plan. And we are rallying people around this plan. And if the plan changes, you come clearly and explain, all right, so we have seen that this will not work, and this is the direction. But it can't be morning, plan A, afternoon, plan B. Tomorrow morning, we back to
No plan.
plan AC.
Yeah. My
Actually,
flag. It's very confusing for the markets. It really reduces investor confidence. Even the way the tax regime was fashioned with the Finance Act, we're not collecting the amounts that we had wanted to collect. In fact, I think we've not even met the target, right? Which is partly why we were not even able to pay. So it really is it is a fine balance. And actually, the other day I was talking to a friend of mine and I was asking, when these targets are being set, do we have like a forecasting department within KRA that says, actually, based on our trends, we're not going to be able to
we
collect
model
this.
this is where
And
we are.
and I had it under good advisement that actually that they do have it and they do advise and they say we're not going to be able to meet these objectives, but then again, politics, right? But then this look of one thing, like you said, one thing in the morning, one thing in the afternoon, it's challenging for even people who want to do business in Kenya to then have some sort of confidence to do that. And I think maybe some advisement around how those pronouncements are made in order.
Yeah, what does that do in terms of confidence?
It reduces
So
it severely.
If our rating was at B, now we go to C. If our rating was at, it left B a long time ago. Our rating has been at C, of course. Now we're heading towards,
C minus.
yeah. So,
And even
and
actually
then
those
if you look
ratings,
at all those things, then is there hope for this shilling ever coming back to even 150?
we might
this
be
it?
living we might be living in 150 for around that area for a long time.
This is it.
But like we said, it's not
It's like
bad or
Nigerian
good. We just
naira
have to
the
settle
dollar will
in it.
hardly ever come back to 600.
Because the markets actually shift around that currency. If it becomes a stabilized 150, then the market will shift around what that currency is. Yeah.
There's an aspect here about the stability of the currency that sometimes is not spoken of, but is a reality. It's the confidence in the leadership of a country.
And actually, that's what the rating is about.
It plays a very,
Yeah.
very key role.
When I was talking with somebody and we were saying, the rating of Argentina and the rating of Angola are wildly different, Angola being worse. But if you look at the fundamentals, Argentina, how many times has it defaulted in loans?
Yes.
All the time. Angola, strong macroeconomics, it has its problems, but they have a higher savings rate and they're able to manage the economy better. But because Fitch and S&P and all of those guys, there's a political angle to these ratings. They give Argentina a better rating, which then makes it easier for them to borrow in the market.
Yes.
So it's also politically very challenging and unfair.
You see, that advance payment that was spoken of by the president, it was supposed to achieve that same effect.
Yeah.
If you can,
Confidence.
if you can marshal your means and then make that payment, it sends a very good signal to that market that these guys are serious.
That we're doing the right thing.
These guys can actually, yes. So when you go with your begging bowl, they say, no, this bowl is small. Bring a bigger basket because we see you are able to. But when that doesn't happen, and you keep kicking the can down the road, the jitters you send.
Yeah.
People say,
There are some things we can do to manage investor confidence. But I think my parting shot is that while there's a lot is being done, I think a lot is being done to shore it up. Some of these things are not as straightforward as we think, and this it's an art. Even though they're numbers, really economics is really an art.
Wangari, thank you very much for joining us. Wangari Muike is an economist. She is a public finance management expert with EGCL Institute. She's been our guest. Keep it here for more conversations. In the next hour, we talk to Chief, what officer? Inspiration. A Chief Inspiration Officer for Haiti.
For Kenya.
Right.